Hello and welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I'm coming at you from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. That's right. Julia and I are visiting Europe because this is where she plans to go to college in September. We will see. If only we can find an apartment. I hope that you are doing okay. I don't have a hangout for you because I'm 7 hours ahead, so off this week, but I do have two great conversations on today's show. Coming up, retired Captain Allison Jaslow talks to us about her run for Congress as well as this horrible war and what it's like. She's, of course, a combat vet from Iraq. Also, though, before that, I've got a great conversation with Christian Finnegan, one of our all-time favorites, comedian and commentator Christian Finnegan, and I caught up, and we talked about all kinds of things. Always great to catch up with Christian, and I think you're going to love that. That's coming up in just a moment, but I want to remind you, Podjam is just 8 days away now, April 9th through 12th. I can't wait to see you in Las Vegas. Wajahat Ali is going to join us, and so are so many of you. It's going to be a riot, so I hope that you will be able to come. Get your tickets. They're still available, and I think that's it. Can't do any of it without your paid subscription, patreon.com/Pete Dominic. All right. I've got to get back to Amsterdam, and I've got to get you to my conversation with Christian Finnegan, which is so good, as always. Go see him at the Detroit Comedy Castle coming up very soon. I think it's this week, everybody. Check Detroit Comedy Castle and Christian Finnegan, and I hope you like it. We did it. We are off, and look who it is, ladies and gentlemen. Christian Finnegan found again. I don't know where he went. But
I like his found again. I like that. Yeah.
He was in Houston.
Who just showed up.
I tried to get him last week, but he was like, no can do. On my way to Houston, you flew on an airplane, and I want to talk to you just about the trip because you were there in Houston. You were doing the stand-up comedy, I believe.
I was doing the stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. Of all the, if you were looking for where the stand-up comedy was, it was at the Riot Conroe this past weekend outside of Houston.
How did those shows go in Texas? How was that airport? I heard it was one of the worst, and I feel like you were in the mix of it. And also, you did those two first.
The shows were fun. Good seats were still available. It's a new club, so it wasn't like packed out or anything, but it's only been open a couple months, and it's a lot of people in the area don't even know it exists. But the people behind it are great, and they seem to have the best of intentions. And like the Riot now owns a few different clubs around the Houston area, and I feel like it's an up and coming little club chain. So I'm happy to be within theoretically. Great. The crowds were good, but definitely it was an away game for me politically with some of the people. I felt this weird compulsion to, even though they're looking out in the audience, okay, this is a table of people who are not going to be attending No Kings. Let's just put it that way. But I felt compelled to at least pick that scab a little bit. Like my whole feeling is people are coming out, they're paying money to see a show. I don't feel like it's my responsibility that I have to bludgeon them with all the ways that they're wrong.
No, I fully agree. Fully agree. I almost am at a place where, though I barely do stand up anymore, I'm threatening to get back into it once my daughter moves out next year. I have to watch out. And I am in a place where I can define having integrity on stage by just making everyone laugh in these times. So much of my material is self-deprecating about my own life and shortcomings and so on anyway. But the idea is people are here. They want to laugh. This is not the place that I need to get on my soapbox and change the world. And I've always thought that about stand-up. It's not a necessity. You don't have to do that. You don't have to speak truth to power. But at this point, everything sets everyone off. And there's all these red flags with your language. And just, can I make all these people laugh? Thus, with the diversity of their views on what reality is. And if I can do that, that's impressive.
I have a weird self-sabotage mode that I go into.
That's fine.
Where I'm neither nor with it. Part of me feels like I should either talk a lot about politics or I should not talk about it at all. But I have this weird thing where when I'm performing in front of a crowd who I know are not aligned with me 100% politically, and I'm not saying everybody, there's certainly people who were, but I feel like I like to get some laughs, some sort of nonpartisan laughs. And then I like to tell them, hey, by the way, I'm X, or tell them a joke that in case you didn't realize, and I feel like most people can kind of sense where I'm at politically just by the way I talk about things, but I do like to be like, hey, this guy you've been laughing at for 20 minutes, I'm a liberal, boo. You know what I mean? I do have this desire to be like, because I think one of the raps that a lot of conservatives have is, oh, liberals, they can't take a joke. There's no sense of humor. And it's like, you were laughing at me. So fuck you. Like, you can't say that I'm some like annoying liberal guy who, you know, isn't a real comedian because you were already laughing at me.
And the opposite is true, really, more than.
Yes. Oh, I know.
They can't laugh at themselves. Yeah. Like I feel like I know a confident person and generally a liberal enlightened person when they're laughing at themselves about anything, and they can't laugh at themselves. Anyway, fully. I want to get back. I want to do an hour of stand-up comedy that is entirely non-controversial. I just remember when I first walked into a comedy club when I was a young man, my dad brought me to Syracuse Wise Guys. And I always think about that. And I try to remind myself of the hundreds of sets I've had where everyone laughed. And I'm like, that's the magic. I want to do that. And I have, my conscience is clear because I advocate for the things I believe in for a living every day. I'm doing everything I possibly can to be the change I want to see. I just want people to come and laugh. I don't really want to make fascists laugh.
As long as you're not saying things that like directly contradict your true beliefs.
Yeah, never
like,
that.
I feel like you have to stand behind everything you say. And that it all goes on the ledger, so to speak. But there is a real quality to just pure laughter that everybody's just enjoying themselves. And that has a healing thing above and beyond that's different than a polemic, certainly. And I have no interest in a polemic from a comedy stage. Save that for the podcast. But I had a good time. And there was definitely, though, in one of the shows where my bringing up No Kings definitely derailed things.
Oh, really?
For about a good 15 minutes.
Oh,
just because it was just kind of, oh, you're on that side. But it's, again, I have this perverse need to be like, hey, I know you were enjoying the show. You've been enjoying a show by a dude who...
Save it for the end, too. I think that's fine. Oh, and by the way, you had a great time. In the last 5 minutes here, I'm going to ruin some people's night, and do my politically divisive stuff. I like this is my stuff. You don't like it, we should all be able to leverage. Boom, and then just run off.
So it's a push and a pull. Because I do want to leave. I do want to at least plant my flag, being like, hey, this is who I am, and this is the person you've been laughing at for however many.
I like that. But I think that's fine and good.
I also want people to enjoy themselves because they fucking paid money and they got a babysitter. They deserve to.
Exactly. How did you experience Houston, Texas, and how are the airport lines now? Did you suffer? Did you go a day early?
I got super lucky. I've been flying quite a bit the past few weeks, so it's the great timing on my part. But the way there, I got super lucky because at LaGuardia, this is really inside baseball shit. I flew out of the Marine Air Terminal, which is this tiny little mini terminal, and I got there 4 hours early, and I was through security in 30 seconds. Because there's literally like 3 flights that leave from that terminal. On the way back, I had a 7 a.m. flight from Houston back to New York, and I couldn't go to sleep. I can never go to sleep. And so at 2:15, I was like, I'm just going to the airport. Screw it. And so I got to the airport at 2:45 a.m. for my almost 4 a.m. by the time I actually got through. And if I had shown up even 20 minutes later, the line would have been twice as long. Like, it was crazy how many people were pulling up at 3 a.m. in the morning to go to the airport.
The idea of waiting for an hour in line with a bunch of people, it puts me up. My anxiety, I don't love being right next to and on top of other humans. I never have a bunch of them. I love people, but I don't want them all over me and around me and stuff. And it just gives me, I'm fine with it. It's not like I'm going to care that much, but I don't love being in a...
Nobody loves that. but yes, I just love standing in line for hours. I
did make myself sound really... That's harder for me than other people because I have a thing.
Other people just love standing in crowded lines for hours, winding back and forth,
coughing and crying and complaining,
pushing their suitcase along with their foot, and babies crying. Everybody loves it.
I do try to keep a
weirdo.
I try to keep space though, but you don't have to be right behind me. So sometimes I'll do little things, gimmicky things to keep the space. I'll put my bag way out. I'll not move forward for a while. Just to irk them.
Do you ever do the thing where you put your elbows behind you, like you pretend you're
that wouldn't give me enough space, but I'll try it. I'm gonna do a back handspring. Is what I'll do. Like at any point, I could just do a back handspring.
Walk through the line.
Crab walk. All right. I'm glad that you...
I wonder if you just walk through the airport crab walking, like how many people, like how long would it take for a security officer? What are you doing? And you'd be like, because it's not technically illegal.
No, I'm working a lot of the muscles that don't get development they generally need. It helps me prepare for a flight, sir, to crab walk a little bit before I get on a 7-hour flight. That's what I'm doing tonight.
There were ICE agents. I did see ICE agents, and I managed to not directly give them the middle finger.
Yeah.
And of course, I had thought to myself, you know what? When I get off in LaGuardia, I'll tell them to fuck off then, because then I'm already home.
That's good.
You know what I mean? But then I didn't pass any from when I got off the gate till I left the airport. So I dodged that bullet.
I said something to young National Guardsmen who were standing just in the Washington Mall in D.C. And I was like, I just said that you guys should not be here. I hope you know that you should not be here.
Did they react at all?
One guy punched me in the face and the other guy recruited me. Which
a real carrot and stick situation.
They were so young. They really were really very young. They looked like they were 17. I was like, I just want you to know.
Did they have any reaction?
No, they were just polite. Thank you for voicing your opinion. How are you not with us with that head of yours? So you are back, and I haven't talked to you in a couple weeks. I want to get your thoughts on everything that's happening in the world, because we always love hearing the way that you're seeing it. And I wonder how closely you're watching the war. We're a month into this, and we've already seen all kinds of terrible ripple effects it's having on energy, which causes all kinds of things. Housing prices, housing interest rates have gone up. Obviously, we could talk about jobs and gas prices and energy and so on. So you've already seen a month in, this 80-year-old madman has destroyed the world, literally. A bunch of people obviously have died, $1 billion a day, and it doesn't seem any end in sight because his negotiation tactics it's over. Everybody knows it's a joke. Like when he's talking, it means he's just getting ready to slap you on the backside. His word is worth nothing, and his representatives are not trustworthy. And that's my recap.
And it's just, and I may have said this before, and I apologize if I'm being redundant, but Trump is a credibility vampire. That he is a tick that fills up with the blood of other people, institutions, credibility. And that is just, it continues to go up the chain. And it's like now, like he literally is making these completely self-interested and absurd decisions, using our national credibility that we've built since, say, World War II as collateral. And it is crazy how quickly he has eroded. I totally accept that America's reputation as the good guys in the world has always been a little bit specious, but I think that there was still a stability that even if you understood that the CIA has been doing shady shit for decades and all that, overthrowing governments and whatnot, there was at least a respect of the sort of hegemonic power of the United States as a global entity. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
That's been the case since I've been alive. And it is just bizarre and dizzying to see how they are just basically setting fire to the whatever foundation American credibility has had in my lifetime. And I don't know that it'll ever come back. Like, how could it? When now the rest of the world knows that we are one crazy president away from abandoning all of our commitments at any given time. Yeah. So even when Trump is gone and we elect a President Pritzker or a President AOC, a President anybody, that the rest of the world knows is, okay, that's great that you believe in these commitments or that you have a moral rectitude. You're one election away from being back to this. And that is just, man, I never really fully bought the idea that like America was going to enter the dustbin of history, that we're just I always, on something, because I've grown up at the height of American power, I always assume that, yeah, it happened to the Roman Empire, it happened to all these other empires, but it'll never happen to America because the world is different now and the world's interconnected and America got in early on. We happen to rise to prominence at the right time where we can basically be a global power for the next however many hundred years.
Yeah.
I don't know now. I really don't know.
I think the way that you phrase that, my response would be, and I'm pretty optimistic and means nothing, but it's worth mentioning the reason why we're here right now is because of the deal that Donald Trump broke in his first term. That was a hard-fought negotiation by John Kerry and many others, Anthony Blinken, during Obama's administration to get the Iran deal. It was far from perfect, and Israel hated it, but they got it done with a lot of other countries as signatories. And, of course, he broke that Paris climate deal at the same time. So the point you're making about how we're one president away from breaking the deal that you just made make a lot of sense. I just want to believe that the rest of the world sees what I see, which is he's an aberration. We'll never have somebody that tries to do the things that he does, tries to make the deals that he does. No one else could ever get away with it, A. And B, we bounce back in a way because of who we are, which is more of an idea, and because of our resources and markets. Like, they're going to be like, you know what, AOC, we'll make a deal with you, knowing that you're never going to have a reality show cartoon villain guy like that again. And everybody wants to win. You got stuff that we want, and certainly you got a huge markets of people that want to buy our stuff. So let's get back to the way we were for the last 50 years. What do you think?
I hope that is the case. I hope that's the case for, I don't have children, but for your children and your children's children.
Thank you.
I super hope that's the case. I am less convinced because, again, I have always looked at Trump as like a forest fire or a hurricane or a national emergency. I'm not really, at a certain point, you can't get mad at Hurricane Katrina. You get mad at FEMA. You get mad at the people on the ground. I know that I'm getting a little bizarre with this metaphor, but what I'm saying is, like, I look at Trump as a natural disaster, and I'm looking at how people are dealing with this natural disaster, and it is not filling me with confidence because Trump is gone, but it's like the Republican Congress and Senate that has, the House and the Senate that has enabled him is still going to be there. Those people are still going to be around. The money that allowed Trump to happen is still going to be there. The Peter Thiels, the Elons, all that. That's all going to be there. I don't know.
The infrastructure is in place to create another madman out of a science experiment of some sort. Or
just a country that is not going to be a good faith actor on the world stage. Yeah. And I don't want to root against us, but I have a hard time rooting for us right now. It's, you know, all these people, I'm very critical of. This is maybe a bit far flung. So I'm as critical of Israel as a lot of people on the left are. When I see a lot of people on the left, some of that starts to wander into anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah.
And I think to myself, think of how the rest of the world, think of how you would feel if people from other countries tarred you with the Trump that, hey, your president does X, Y, therefore I hate all Americans. Like, I don't agree with anything Trump says. So I try to apply the same thing to Israel. I cannot blame rank and file Israelis for what their government is doing. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic, but what I'm saying is that I think that Americans have this idea that the world is going to continue to see us as the good guys and that Trump was this aberration. It's like, I don't necessarily know that's true. I think
I don't either, but that's what I'm banking on. I'm banking on some very inspirational, inclusive figure who is able to somehow be charismatic enough to convince enough of us. I don't know. I guess I'm really surprised by...
That sounds a little Deus Ex Machina to me.
It may sound Deus Ex Machina to you, but to many of us who don't know what you mean by that, it means nothing. And so I'd like to finish my point, which is...
Do you know what it means?
It's a movie.
It means God. It means like you're waiting for a savior. And I only know this because I was a theater student. Deus Ex Machina it means God from the machine. And basically, like, the end of these Greek tragedies, they would have a god that was like lowered from like a basically a machine, and like they'd be lowered like almost Peter Pan on wires, essentially. It basically means just a savior that comes out of nowhere and makes everything okay.
A plot device where an unsolvable, hopeless crisis is suddenly resolved by an unexpected, unlikely, or external intervention. Yeah, that's what I meant. A deus ex machina. Like a person, or I'm just thinking of what Mom Donnie did in New York was remarkable and should be given credit, that he convinced a whole bunch of people who were very critical of him, skeptical of him, concerned about him. And he continues to, I think. You can tell me you're a New Yorker and you can tell me what you think watching closer. And I think that's a possibility for a president. Yes, I do think this is a very diverse country. That's a very diverse city. And I think that the future of our economy is going to have to be something different. And that's going to be a more popular ideology, the taxing the rich to redistribute that money as one thing, not to mention just the simple idea of hiring qualified people to run the show and do it in a very efficient way. Bloomberg did that too. He hired a lot of qualified people to run the show. You can do that and do it effectively. You can have good government. And since they blew it up, you have an excuse to recreate it.
I certainly agree that is actually
okay. Good then. Maybe
this is the accelerationist theory of left politics, that it's like things will get so bad that they have to get good, which I can understand that it's like in many ways seeing how hollow our institutions have become might allow for the growth of a real left populist government that might be more equitable in the future. Accept that. But what I would say to counter that slightly is just that I think that there is a trust level that other countries had for America that will not be resolved simply by a better president. That there is going to be if I was Europe right now, I would not be doing anything to strengthen ties with America. If anything, I'd be preparing for the fact that maybe one day America is going to be a rival to Europe and not an ally.
How dare you come in here, tell the Europeans to abandon us? That's what it sounds like you're saying. They can't depend on American.
I love the idea that it's just, hey, you fucking losers who we've insulted for the past year and a half, and that we went to this war without even consulting you and mocking the idea that we should have to consult you. Why aren't you helping us? Do you seem to get your,
but I don't remember much about it. I remember enjoying it. I remember I watched it in the theater and I enjoyed it.
In my opinion, one of the most airtight comedies
is that right?
The past 30 years.
Okay, wow.
Like in terms of just every scene is funny. Every scene, there's not a lot of dead air. There's no wasted but there's a scene where John Travolta's talking to Gene Hackman. He's something defective. You're asking me for help without admitting you fucked up, which is a very hard thing to do, which is like what Trump is doing with the world. It's why don't you help us? But I'm not asking you for help. You guys are still assholes. But anytime you'd like to give us a hand with this, we'd appreciate it. But still, fuck you. It's hard to hold those two things at the same time.
It's exactly it. I know that I almost invaded Denmark a couple of weeks ago, and I said I was going to. And I know I tried to make Canada a state, and I shat upon all these countries over and over. And I know you did help us, NATO, in the past after 9/11, but fuck all of you. Over and over. Now get over here and help me.
Yeah. It's
help me clean up the fire I just started. Get over here and help me, not because I was attacked. Get over here and help me end this war that I started because I'm an 80-year-old absolute crazy person.
Yeah. And that's not even getting into the Epstein of it all, which if you want to draw that direct, I am not someone who believes that it was literally, oh my God, the Epstein files are coming out, therefore we have to start a war with Iran. But I do think it is Epstein. We need to change the subject. What is a topic that we feel better about? Let's be aggressive. And then all the people who've wanted to go to bomb Iran for generations filled that vacuum. And here's something we can do. And here's something so I don't think it's a direct one-to-one Epstein, therefore Iran, but I think that they're completely linked.
Well, the other clear primary cause as to why the war started when it did was because all reportings, and I think the Israelis have said, they were going. And you can either join us or not.
Why were they going? Why were they going?
Because they were going because Iran was so vulnerable, and because they had a long-term plan. Israel wasn't fucking around. They know exactly what they're doing and what targets they want to attack and when and why. And they went because those 40 dudes were all in the same building at once. So we're going now to kill all these motherfuckers and cut the head off. Go ahead. What were you
saying? What I'm saying is, like, why were they going now? They were going now because it was Trump who was U.S. president. And because
no doubt they would have never done this with
even if the regime was as unstable and all the protests that happened exactly the way they have over the past year. If this was President Biden, or maybe with Biden because Trump was still a factor and Netanyahu used that against Biden. But anyway, if this was President Obama or President Bush, even
they would have needed permission.
Yeah, they would have needed permission, and they would not have acted with such impunity, knowing that the tail is officially seriously wagging the dog at this point, and that Trump was going to be embarrassed into war, if not directly enthusiastic for it.
Yeah, I think that's all really good points and worth continuing to talk about in different ways. The longer this goes, we need to keep having discussions and not forget why this started, when it started, how it started. There's no doubt.
It's like what I get concerned about is what is going to happen 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, when a major terrorist attack happens in the United States and it is traced directly back to this right now. That it's like whether Iran or one of Iran's proxies.
I always worry about that after terrorist. Afghanistan and Iraq.
What is our response to be to then when Trump's dead? We have another president.
The response will be hubris. Hubris. It will be as if we learned nothing.
The bill is going to come due for this. There's going to be multiple bills coming due.
I think
for this,
so too.
For a generation plus.
Yeah, I'm afraid that is a very high likely possibility. I hope it's wrong. We were wrong in a lot of ways. After Iraq, I always thought after 9/11 we were on borrowed time. I was like, after that, I think a lot of people like, when's the next one? And I'm the optimist guy. And then after Abu Ghraib torture and all the other horrible things that we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, I was sure there would be more. And there were a lot of attempts and there were a lot of other smaller, but nothing like that ever since. But I think I still feel that borrowed time feeling. And anytime you do what we've done this unilaterally too, it's just so bad. It's really very bad. And before I let you go, though, I do want to talk about something good, which is No Kings. And you were in Houston, and I guess you were
my No Kings was a little lackluster. I did not realize I had no car. I was in this, one of those corporate hotel lots where it's like you're just in the middle of a parking lot and there's nothing around you or whatever. And I don't know why. I guess I must have misread the map. I went to the No Kings map and I thought the nearest actual march was about 17 miles from me, and I had nowhere to get there. And I had put out feelers among the club, like wait staff. Hey, anybody going to No Kings? And there was a collective shrug. But then I walked out of my hotel to go to lunch, and at the corner there were probably only about 150 or so people there, but it was towards the end of what the festivities would have been. And so I was very heartened by that. I hung out there for 20 minutes standing there, even though I had no sign. So they probably thought I was a narc. They thought I was some Republican plant, but still it was heartening to see, because this is a very Trumpy area. I was if you know that part of Houston, I was in the Woodlands, which is a very kind of Trump boater friendly type place. Not boaters, literally the kind of dudes who own car dealerships, or that their dad owned a car dealership and bequeathed it to them, who like to talk about merit and meritocracy, fucking born on third base.
Meritocracy.
Yeah. But so I was very encouraged and really tipped my cap. I grew up in Boston. I moved to New York when I was 18. I've never lived in a place where protesting was brave at all. You know what I mean? It's always been very easy for me, which makes it maybe more disgraceful that I haven't done more of it. But I really tip my cap to people who are standing out in front of a bunch of pickup trucks and Land Rovers, and many of whom would gladly plow through them.
Is it hard for you tip your cap and deliver the newspaper at the same time, or do you just wait until you toss it?
That's my response to that. That's my...
I wouldn't have made any joke about your cap until you started tipping it.
You're right.
I imagined you tipping.
People who are listening to the podcast, I am wearing a newsboy cap right now, which is, I don't know why that my just gut response was to go into like third grade, just making sounds.
What is your response to what was your response, not to your own personal experience, but to the show of people power that we saw over the weekend at No Kings, one of the biggest protests in America ever?
I think it was the biggest. I think so. Single day protest. Again, they'll never get the attention for it. I'm not the first or 500th person to make this observation, but 30 times the size of the Tea Party protests that everybody acted as if this was like the populist harbinger of politics to come, that the Tea Party was so meaningful, and how many fucking months of just bullshit coverage we had over the Tea Party as if it was about anything other than just knee-jerk oppositional defiance towards a black president. Like they tried to dress it up and put lipstick on that pig so many times. Oh, these people are really concerned about the role of government. Bullshit. Never. None of them. It was all astroturf nonsense, and it was a bunch of angry, mostly white people who were looking for a pretty way. They needed some sort of intellectual, artificial justification for the angry ranting they already wanted to do that was fueled by, if not directly caused by, racism.
That's right.
Like, even if it wasn't, it was the helium that lifted the balloon. Let's put it that way. It's all that sort of anti-government rage of the early Obama administration was 100% fueled by racism, even if it wasn't directly racist in definition.
I knew it then when I covered it for CNN. I never ever questioned it. That was always the answer. And you could pin them down with a few questions, but talking about financial issues, it was
it's completely bullshit. Yeah.
And it was AstroTurf. It was funded by
100%.
Unlike this movement. By the way, I fucking hosted my No Kings. I was asked to host it, and I was happy to do that because that's not too hard. I can do that. But they didn't have someone to set up the PA. They had a system, but I had to set everything up with the mixer and everything. And it was a lot, and it was nerve wracking because there's like 700 people, and I'm like the sound guy, and I didn't know how to work it. And my point of saying all that is only that I didn't get paid. Like, no one paid me for all of that. There was no money in organizing
these people,
things.
They can't fathom the idea of doing something just because it needs to be done. They can't fathom.
I don't know anybody who got the indivisible organizers. If they're getting money from somewhere, I haven't seen it. I don't know where it's going. It's not being spent on anything. A Zoom account for our meetings.
But it is just so annoying to see these sort of elite Jeremy Peters, New York Times, and people like this just dismiss and poo this. I don't know what this desire is to diminish anybody to your left. That like anybody to your right needs to be taken seriously, listened to, and anybody to your left needs to be mocked and dismissed. That's just, it has constantly been the pose of our major institutional media for the past 20 years. Benny,
a really smart, very funny listener in the chat, captures what you just said by saying, we get more coverage of some idiot in a diner than 10 million people in the streets.
Yeah. It's the media, I hate saying the media, but like many figures in the mainstream media are so bought into the idea that they don't want to be perceived as liberal. And so they have to just completely meet the right halfway, no matter how far the right moves the goalposts. They don't want to tell the truth. They want to show both sides, and the right has taken advantage of that.
Absolutely. So
20 years.
You've perfectly framed what's been wrong. And I've known that and seen that my entire career in media, thinking about the window and how it keeps moving. It's window of fairness. And I'm still over on scientific consensus on a thing. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but they all say that. Why are you going over? Where are you going? Off the cliff.
It'd be one thing if it like resulted in massive viewership, But it'd be one thing if
doesn't
this,
work.
this sort
Exactly.
of it doesn't even work. It's not even functioning anymore.
Right. It lowers the credibility. Christian Finnegan, such a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much for doing this. It's been too long. I really appreciate you. As always, your perspective.
I love you, Pete.
People are already giving this conversation great reviews. Some of my favorite listeners. For real.
I like reviews. Yeah. Like Letterboxd, but for
one person wants me to clip out your framing of Trump asking other countries to help him while he was shitting on them. I got that comment. And of course, one of my favorite guests, Bill Boyle, is a big fan of yours. And he's happy to see you. So I was serious.
Didn't come see me in DC, even though I invited him, but whatever.
Oh, really? He skipped you? Oh, that's interesting.
No, he couldn't make it.
I bet you he'll make it next time. All right, bud. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right, that's my conversation with the great Christian Finnegan. See him at the Detroit Comedy Castle coming up this week. And that is not it. That is not it. I almost said that's all. I've got a great conversation with former Army Captain Allison Jaslow, who's a good friend of mine, a really good friend of mine. She's a former executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan's Veterans of America. Real smart, real savvy, real hardworking, real determined, very patriotic, and of course was in the Army, served in combat in Iraq, and I had a great conversation with her, catching up and getting her perspective on everything that we're seeing happening. So here it is, my conversation with Allison Jaslow right now. Yes, as promised, look who I have. Retired Captain, Army Captain. Allison Jaslow, of course, everybody knows her. She was the executive director of Iraq and Afghanistan. Veterans of America, recently ran for Congress in North Carolina, where I think she is now, in a beautiful place that she's at. How do you feel about retired captain? Is that technically true?
I did not retire, no.
So that's a thing that...
I separated as a captain.
So you attribute that if someone actually... I don't know what that even means, to retire. If you retire, if that was your last rank, but you didn't retire, that's some kind of official status?
It's the rank that I attained before I separated from active duty.
What does it mean to
I still earned that rank. I just didn't formally retire from the military. You have to do 20 years before you can retire.
Oh, how long were you in the Army?
A little over 4 years.
You went after college, right?
I was an ROTC cadet, so I attended college on an ROTC scholarship. So technically, I was in the Army system for the entire 4 years. And then you contract, and at a certain point in your contract, you have to fulfill an obligation regardless. If you don't finish college, you have to enlist. I ended up finishing college, you get commissioned and sworn in, and then you go to training, and then you're on active duty.
Fascinating to me, all of it, especially now because of what's happening in the world, which I'm going to ask you about, get your thoughts on, of course. But first, so you ran for Congress, North Carolina's 3rd District, came up short in the primary a couple weeks ago. North Carolina had its primary. I reached out to you and you said you felt great about it. You did your best. You obviously learned a lot. So tell me about what it was like to run for Congress. That was a really big, tough decision. You put a lot out there, worked your ass off. How was it, the experience?
Listen, I think, first of all, a lot of people are searching for their way to make a difference in this moment or to do something given the state of affairs in our country. And so for me, when the opportunity presented itself, it was a way where I could step up and do something. After Republicans redistricted North Carolina's map, once again, we've done it a couple of times, when the president actually was on this redistricting tear across the country, and ultimately made one of their incumbent members more vulnerable. I had to make a quick decision just before the filing deadline in December. And as you mentioned, I jumped in, and it was a tight timeline, but I feel really good about us giving it our best effort on what was a very tight timeline between December until earlier this month. And ran a campaign that I'm proud of. And I think that earned a lot of people's respect given what we were able to accomplish in a short period of time. So it wasn't meant to be for me to be the general election candidate. I was really looking forward to taking it to Greg Murphy and also to North Carolina Republicans for shamelessly redistricting once again. I will say the gentleman who led the redistricting actually lost his reelection in a primary on the same day. Senator Phil Berger, who was rolled by the president, really wanted his endorsement, led the most recent round of redistricting. He actually lost on the same day. So I feel karma's prevailed regardless here.
Greg Murphy's the incumbent. He's running again, right?
Correct.
And how do you think do you think Democrats can win a seat? And just in general about North Carolina, is it going the way that much of the country is going, seemingly, in terms of politically?
North Carolina's 3rd district is rated an R+6, so it's definitely a winnable race. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, though. A strong campaign is going to have to be run. The incumbent not only has the advantage of incumbency, which is watered down a little bit by having a new district. So he's running in a district that he hasn't fully represented, but he also has a lot of money in the bank. He has a powerful committee seat in Congress. He sits on the Ways and Means Committee. So it's going to be tough to knock him off in a year like this year, but as long as a strong campaign is run, it could happen. The environment, unfortunately, is just not a good environment for somebody like Greg Murphy to be running in a seat like he has right now.
Lots to talk about in terms of what would matter to people in that district, of course, especially because Camp Lejeune is there, right? Isn't that in the district that you were running in?
Yes. And Seymour Johnson Air Force Base.
I don't know how many are at each one of those bases, but they vote and it matters. And you would think that the circumstances that have unfolded in the world would probably affect that vote as well. I want to ask you, of course, about that. What do you think, though, in terms of what Democrats need to be doing between now and Election Day? Just finally, that question, strategy-wise, I heard one person suggest that they just take a vacation and let Trump and Republicans do everything they're doing and not step on their own tails, if you will, and make a mistake, because they are really not doing much good for themselves. What do you think of that?
I'm in agreement in the sense that I think that in a lot of ways, the current president is hanging his own party headed into the November election. I actually don't know that it even needs to be highlighted for the American people. I think that most voters are smarter than we treat them, I think, sometimes. But they see the misplaced priorities of the current administration. They feel the chaos and the increasing uncertainty around matters that impact their daily lives. And I think it's a real easy choice headed into November in terms of at least something to put a little bit of a check on what's currently happening in our country right now. It doesn't even feel like we have a Congress right now, for God's sake. So I think it just matters that we're, at least Democratic candidates across the country, whether you're running for the House or for the Senate, I think it's just really important for people to believe that you get their everyday lives. And I think that if we end up with nominees who feel like they are as out of touch or have misplaced priorities as much as the current administration, I think that could make it, depending on how tough of a seat it is, I think that makes it harder. So the more, relatable and in touch you are with everyday Americans' lives, I think the better it will be for Democrats in November, provided those are the types of candidates that make it through primaries.
We'll see. All great points.
We'll see.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns?
Primaries are unpredictable, and there are a lot that still need to be litigated between now and the general election.
People have varying degrees of concern about the election itself, the election security, how it could be affected, influenced. Do you share concern about election security in the midterm elections?
I think it's an activist role to raise alarm bells before we are overly alarmed. I think it feels like, I think redistricting is a good example. It feels like those who are in power right now will do anything to keep power.
Yeah.
We'll just see how that plays out, especially given that elections are administered not nationally, but at the state and local level. And you've seen pushback. I think when it comes to redistricting, again, the Indiana legislature really dug in and was not going to be rolled. And some of those elected leaders might pay the price because I think that they are facing primaries right now too. But it's stuff like that gives me hope. And I try not to be Chicken Little in situations like this, although it does feel like we're in a really dire moment, of course.
Let me ask you about just a little bit about your service before we start talking about what's happening right now in Iran. When you first deployed, did you have strong opinions about the war in Iraq before you went to Iraq? Did you have your own personal opinions?
Oh, that's a good question. I will say it's funny. When you're an ROTC cadet, I think 9/11 was another time, like the time that we're living in right now, where people, this scenario happened in our country and everybody had to decide how they were going to respond to it, right? Yeah. There are some people who left their private sector jobs and enlisted. I had buddies who were also ROTC cadets and decided that they didn't want to have to wait until they had to graduate, that they wanted to get in the fight now, who dropped out, enlisted, and were on the way to Afghanistan not long afterwards. I think for me, I pretty quickly concluded, okay, I joined a peacetime army. We are now about to be a nation at war. I knew that this could happen when I joined. And so I'm just going to let the agreed to plan already execute. We go to war in Afghanistan my sophomore year of college. And then it was, I guess, the spring of my junior year of college that we went to war in Iraq. And so literally, I remember watching it. You remember how we all watched it on TV?
Oh, yeah.
We watched it as cadets as the war was unfolding. I also will never forget, I was doing a field training exercise the weekend after the vote to authorize use of military force in October of 2002. And so it literally happened overnight. We're in a ODARC 30 formation the next morning where our instructor basically was like, we're in war in Afghanistan. We're about to go to war in Iraq. You're not avoiding war. So basically take this training exercise seriously, as though it is training you for the real deal. And inevitably, I found myself in Iraq in the fall of 2004. And to answer your question, I don't know that I was... by the time I got there, there were no weapons of mass destruction, and we had already captured Saddam.
Oh, wow.
But I think it's probably a coping mechanism, Pete, that I wasn't going to allow myself to have strong feelings about, how we got into the war, what we knew when we knew it. You have to remember at the time, too, Colin Powell was a hero of mine when I was in high school. And I think, again, if somebody who is your hero is the one who basically sold the war to the American people, I don't know that I'm inclined to be as hard on him as other people were. But also, you're going to war whether you like it or not. You get given orders and you sign an oath and say that you're going to take orders when they're given to you if they're lawful, right? So I don't think it served me well to have a lot of thoughts, feelings, and emotions about the premise of the war. But I will say, and this is something that weighs heavy on the moment that we're in right now, though, where you really get thrust into having to process that is when you suffer loss on the battlefield and you look into the eyes of your soldiers who are incredibly distraught. This is like pre-grieving. You're just reeling from the loss. And I know. It's in those moments that they want you as a leader to be able to tell them why they died. And when you can't, that sucks. And that was my immediate thought when other troops that were lost in Kuwait. Obviously, we've suffered a number of losses throughout the current military engagement in Iran right now. But when troops go to Kuwait, oftentimes you're pre-positioning just in case something happens in that region. I had a buddy who was actually in Kuwait just before things started unraveling in Afghanistan, and he quickly was flown into Bagram. But oftentimes when you're in Kuwait, you're just rotating through, and you're just a contingency force. And when those troops got attacked and we lost, I think 6 or 7, it may have even been more lives in Kuwait, I feel for the platoon leader that was in charge of those troops, because the people who served alongside them were probably WTF? How did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did this need to happen? And if you're a platoon leader and this is literally shocked you as much as it shocked the American people, that's a really hard moment to be in as a leader. You want to at least be able to have the answers for your troops as to why the ultimate sacrifice was made. And that concerns me for those who are in leadership positions right now, because I don't feel like we have all the information as to why this was necessary aggression that was taken on by our country and one of our allies.
What do you make of, let's get into that. That's all really impactful and honest and important, and including your own experience in Iraq there. as a leader. And I just want to talk about what's happening right now and get your reactions to it. First of all, the Secretary of Defense calls himself the Secretary of War, the Department of Defense, now called the Department of War. And he uses a kind of rhetoric, and I'm not even talking about the over masculinity stuff, the tough guy stuff. I'm talking about the kind of like the lethality. We're going to strike with extreme lethality and all those kind of quotes about killing. And that surprised me most. And I'm guessing it surprises most in the military or most who have served to hear any leader talk that way, even if it was a lieutenant or a platoon leader. I feel like that's not taught, or the opposite is taught. And I also feel like it's terrible for propaganda purposes for our enemies to be able to cite this kind of rhetoric. And finally, and specifically, I wanted to ask you about his overt religiosity, specifically his brand of Christianity, and how that goes over. Because he said he thinks all Americans need to get down on one knee and pray for our troops in the name of Jesus. And I was shocked that he said Jesus. I would never be surprised for a Secretary of Defense or any leader to say pray for our troops, ever. But in the name of Jesus really caught my eye, because not everybody prays in the name of Jesus, Allison. And a lot of people feel pretty offended by that, including those who wear the uniform. So your thoughts on his rhetoric, his language, and specifically that part?
I'd say a couple of things. One, did anyone doubt that we had, or still have, the world's strongest military, which would imply that it's a very lethal force? I just think if I was serving under him right now, I would find it offensive that we have to, puff ourselves up in that way, because I think a lot of the commanders, especially like in the special forces, are walking around thinking that they're lean, mean, lethal fighting machines, and that we don't have to provide sound bites that help us prove that to the rest of the world. I think we have shown ourselves over time, at least in my adult lifetime that I witnessed, that we're pretty good at intimidating the rest of the world. And so to me, I think that there's a lot that the current Secretary of Defense does that seems to, my sense is his own insecurities are driving a lot of his posturing in that position. Why
are you so professional and nice about it? The way you say it is really, my sense is that his insecurities are driving a lot of. Is that your sense? Holy shit. The dude is unlike anyone we've ever met. I bet you don't know too many people that make it as far as he has and act that way. It's all fake and weird and awful and scary and bad. Sorry, I just had to make it worse.
Yeah, and obviously his boss likes it, though.
Right.
But his boss is probably similarly insecure.
Yeah, he paints himself
around those who actually did answer the call to service.
Yes.
When their nation asked them. When it comes to religion, it's funny. One of my really good buddies when I was in ROTC, who was a classmate of mine, was Muslim. I don't believe that he
has denounced
his religion since. I haven't chatted with him in a number of years. I'll never forget. I think it was a very acceptable culturally, and especially in the Army, to not be super kind towards individuals who practice the Muslim faith. And I felt for him back then, having to just operate in an environment where people were overtly unkind and or I don't even want to repeat some of the comments that I've heard come out of an ROTC instructor's mouth. But that's a long way to say that we have people who are from all different backgrounds, and I wouldn't want any person in a leadership position to turn off folks based on the faith that they hold most dear to themselves, because it's a tacit implication that other faiths aren't welcome or honored to the same level. And that's a shame, because there are people from all different faiths and or consider themselves agnostic and or atheist, which, oh, by the way, I'll speak from personal experience. if you've been to war and experienced war, there are some people who really hang on to their faith and they take the St. Christopher medallion with them, and that's how they make it through. I think that there's plenty of folks, myself included, who experiencing war makes you question whether there actually is a God. If there is a God, like how is there like divine meaning behind what you're experiencing in the course of war? Like for me, I feel like there's as many people probably who question their faith during that experience as those people who hung on to it for dear life. And I think you have to be able to honor like the spectrum of which service members exist on as it relates to matters of faith, which honestly shouldn't come into the workplace. Keep it at home. Units have chaplains, but chaplains, even though they have their individual faith, they're like a social worker. Like they check in on health and welfare. They are eyes and ears for their commanders. They also come from all different types of backgrounds as well. And I think chaplains are actually better at honoring people of different faith than our current secretary.
Oh yeah, for sure. They understand. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. What are you hearing now? You ran the premier organization that advocated for veterans of the Iraq and Afghan generation, and obviously served yourself. So you're pretty deep into the community. What do you hear now from people about this war, this conflict, whatever they call it? I think we should call things war when we're dropping bombs on people, and they on us and our neighbors and friends in the region. What are you hearing from people about this invasion, this conflict? It doesn't seem to be popular with any demographic, with any constituency. But I don't, just your own personal experience talking to those who are currently serving or did serve, because that's the other thing. What I learned working with IAVA and getting to meet so many veterans is they had really strong opinions on their service and those conflicts. And more importantly, even if they didn't, they understood intimately what happens to people when they serve in war and combat. And overwhelmingly, it would seem they don't want to see that happen again. It's true of a lot of veterans who serve in combat. They don't want another war to happen, not on their watch and not during their life. And so they're often come out against these conflicts. So what are you hearing? What are you thinking?
I'd say a couple of things in response to that. One, the Sunday after the strikes were initiated, which I think happened on Saturday, right? We all woke up on Sunday or one of those days.
Yeah, that's right.
I got added to a Facebook group of a bunch of Iraq war vets. The initial feeling, I think, from folks was it was a lot of like processing. I think it triggered emotions about our own experiences that folks were, who knows what that meant for everybody who was in that group, but the person who started the group felt like they needed community with other Iraq war vets in that moment. And I say specifically Iraq war because we commonly refer to the Afghanistan war as the righteous war for the post 9/11 generation. Obviously it got complicated as it dragged on, but the Iraq war very early on was believed to be much more complicated and unjustified. And so I think at least those who served in that war, I think were processing a lot of like feelings around it when it first started, to include also like having an aha, to your point about different generations, about like counsel that Vietnam era veterans were giving some of us young vets before we left. Because it's funny, I think all our wartime experience changes all of us in very different ways. But something that's true for all of us is there's the person who we were before we had that experience, and there's the person who we were afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
And some of us went multiple times, and both of those times, or all three of those times, changed us. And so I think it's been a very reflective time for many of us. I mentioned to you before about how I said this in an interview right after I became the CEO of IAVA back in 2023. It's like something that has been like very important to me for my adult life as a civilian is I've not wanted any other platoon leader to have to look in the eyes of their soldiers and not be able to answer to them as to why one of their fellow soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice. And I wouldn't say that like I personally failed in that, but I was really hoping that wasn't going to happen again.
Yeah.
And I have to believe it is in this current moment, because again, first of all, I will be the first to say that no different than Russia, Iran is a big threat to our nation and has been. It is true what you're seeing, especially a lot of Republican members saying that they colluded with terrorists to kill U.S. service members, whether it was in Iraq or in other Middle East countries. They've been after us and they have taken lives. And that is all true. But getting engaged in the type of conflict that we have been engaged in and might not be able to pull back from, but something that needs to be done more thoughtfully, more judiciously. And honestly, the president, his hubris here is sort of breathtaking.
Yeah.
Because he would have been wise to at least get the American people, sell some kind of story about a threat before attacking. Not just letting everybody wake up to it.
It's crazy the way it happened. We didn't even have time to form an opinion. In the run up to the Iraq War and every other conflict, there was a lot of conversation. There was a lot of propaganda. There was a lot of promises. We just woke up and there they were. I can only imagine what it was like to be on a ship or a base.
Yeah. And to your point about those who are still serving, I'm really concerned about the sailors who are on the USS Gerald Ford. They've been at sea for a long time. Yeah. I believe they're off the coast of Venezuela before they got diverted to this region. And it's just a long time for them to be at sea. And it doesn't just wear down your overall mission readiness. I'm not the expert on the Navy. I just know that they've been out far longer than they should have been. It wears on morale because that's that much longer that you're away from your family and that your kids are feeling that and or your marriage is feeling that. We don't talk a lot about how deployments, especially multiple deployments that my generation of veterans experienced, tore apart families while folks were gone.
Yeah. Yeah. We never talk about that.
It's really hard. Not just the horrors of war are one thing, but there's a lot of other factors here at play and a lot of other collateral damage that happens when we decide to deploy troops, especially under wartime conditions. There are troops that get deployed all the time for just peacetime readiness patrol missions. But also a dear friend of mine is married to a Marine at Camp Lejeune, and he just made the decision to drop his retirement paperwork. And she is super happy because when he went to Afghanistan 10 plus years ago, they didn't have kids, and that sucked for her. But she does not want to have to go through a deployment with kids and have to explain what all of that means and have to manage their anxieties in addition to hers. So I don't know if there's a world in which Steve gets stop lost at some point, depending on how things unfold here, because it is still early. And I think we're engaged with an enemy that is fuck around and find out. And so I want to hope for the best here, but I think we all need to manage expectations that we could be a little in over our heads here.
That was going to be my last question, talking about spouses and families. I just got the great opportunity to meet a longtime listener and a guy who's become a friend named Ryan, who is going to be the commander of a ship. He's married, got 4 kids, ages 13 to 21. And it made me think a lot about his wife having to take care of everything and work full time while he's gone. And as you mentioned, be worried all the time and not necessarily knowing what's happening. All of those considerations are seemingly never brought up in mainstream media or news in these conversations. And the sacrifice often is the spouse, the partner who's back home, who has to do everything, and the kids, and the concern about that. So even if you're, quote, never in harm's way, if you're deployed for the wrong reasons or at the whim of a president to potentially distract because of a scandal or for any reason, it better be the right reasons. It can't be done without thought because of the ripple effect that we're talking about, specifically with what any family has to deal with. So to have a spouse and kids, especially if they're little, even if they're older, back home, and the amount of work that you have to do. I was joking about it. I was like, my ex-wife left. She didn't travel too much, and my girls were little, but she left for 2 days, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't take care of these 2 kids. Come back. I've been gone I'm not even at the airport yet. I'm like, please. It's so hard. And so these decisions should not be made the way that they are made, without care or thought, because of what it means. And it means a lot.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. In addition to First of all, there are examples, there were when I was deployed, where with families where both parents were serving, where both parents deployed.
Jesus.
So you have circumstances sometimes, because listen, if you join the military, if you're 18, if you just got out of high school, or I was 21 when I was sworn in, you're young, probably single, not everybody, but like many people, you might meet your spouse at your workplace, right? So there are instances where both service members are deployed, because you also try and get stationed together. So you might be in units that support each other or whatever else. So there's times where grandparents have to step up and the kids have to be worried about both of their parents. And I think that not only is there family members who have to shoulder the burden of taking care of the home front while the service member is deployed, I will say I have a ton of empathy for family members, and that's of all kinds, not just the nuclear family. Because when you're the service member, even if you are like the one who's exposed to danger, the one that has tracer rounds going over your convoy or you're dodging IEDs, you at least know when you're like outside of the wire on the convoy.
Yeah.
And then when you're back inside the base, right. Your family members
never knows.
Yes, are just worried all of the time.
Yeah.
So like your anxiety comes like just as you're about to roll out of the gate, and then you go into fight or flight, like hyperactive, like vigilant mode or whatever until you're back. But your family members have to worry all the time. And what they worry about the most is when you're stateside, officers and non-commissioned officers and chaplains rotate through a duty of being the person who has to notify family members that their loved one has either been killed or in some cases injured. And so I think if you're a family member, your loved one deploys, especially if you're next of kin, and you go to sleep every night hoping that somebody doesn't knock on your door to tell you that they're no longer around. That's your reality until they're back home.
Yep.
And I think too few people have an appreciation for the sacrifices that family members make alongside of them. And my sister got physically sick the last time she saw me before I deployed my first time, because people process their emotions in different ways, but it's really hard. You feel so out of control of the situation. And I think a lot of our family members are really proud of us, but it's also hard to divorce that pride and respect for what we're doing from the love that you have of somebody who you want to stay around a lot longer than they might.
Oh, such really good points and such a very valued perspective on this issue. It is exactly the conversation I wanted to have with you, Allison, and I really appreciate it. Yeah. It's really important. And it's so hard to see this happening again after what happened in Iraq, and now seeing this, which is and we tend to, I think, compare Iran to Iraq, and the country is much different. The conflict is much different, and the time that we're in is much different. And the leadership is way different. I never thought I would have said that, like, the Bush administration were responsible adults compared to Hegseth Rubio and Donald Trump. But this is not the Bush administration even. And so it's really seemingly volatile. I'm trying to make the point. It's hard to compare, but we have to, because it's all we know. But we shouldn't, because it's different.
Yeah, I think the current administration is reckless. I think the Bush administration was manipulative.
The current administration is both, right? Manipulative and reckless as well. They haven't even given a press conference like the military, the Pentagon, I don't think, in a week and a half or something like that.
Yeah, but they've been avoiding the press for most of
They kicked the press out.
Yes.
Pentagon.
Which is unfortunate, because honestly, like, even when press has a lot of access, it's an age-old tale that the Defense Department tries to show the truth in the best light. And they still have a lot of opportunity to do that, because so much of what the military does is classified and has to be kept top secret. They still would have a lot of ability to control the narrative, even with the press having full access. And honestly, I'm the first person to say, if I was some of these Pentagon reporters and or reporters who have also served on ground in the most recent conflicts overseas, I would be personally offended, because especially some of these reporters who've ridden in Humvees with service members, like, they care deeply about service members' lives, and to suggest that they can't be trusted with information that could compromise U.S. troops is just BS. because they care as much about, if not more, our service members than the average American. So it's a real shame. And I honestly believe, I think our democracy can only be strong if we have a healthy and strong fourth estate. And I wish the press not only had access, but as a country, we would stop bashing. There's some people who are in the air quotes media who I don't respect, but there are a lot of good journalists out there, and we need quality journalists to hold people in power to account. That's the only way our democracy can be as healthy as we need it to be, and it most certainly isn't right now.
Yeah, that's becoming a lot harder to do as well. Allison, Jaslow, always a pleasure to be in conversation with you, my friend. It's great to see you and talk to you. I really appreciate you doing this today, and I'm sure we'll be talking again really soon.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, and thank you for also caring. I saw a reporter who actually covers the media say something very smart on what was formerly known as Twitter, but is now known as X today, where he encouraged his colleagues to stop just reporting about boots on ground, that it's not just boots, and these people aren't just numbers. They have faces, and they have names, and they have family members. So thank you for allowing me to offer some of that perspective. Yeah,
no doubt.
Today, because these are real people who are subjected to the decisions of political leaders. And we have to understand that our choices of political leaders have life and death consequences. And this is another reminder of that.
Yeah, I've been real uncomfortable with the phrase boots on the ground. And every time I say it, I correct myself and try to elaborate a little bit more. These are actual Americans that are being sent to fight. And yes, their boots are going to be on the ground, but let's talk about the ground that they're going to be on and what that's going to mean, and try to flesh it out a little bit, because it's crazy to think that American forces, from the 82nd Airborne to Marine Expeditionary or anyone else, are going to be actually on the ground in the country of Iran. I never thought we would see that. I think it sounds like a real bad idea, and I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, we'll see. Unfortunately, the troops at least have to be deployed if we're going to look serious about that threat. My hope is that still we'll dodge the bullet, but only time will tell here. And I think we should not underestimate our foe here.
That's a fair warning. Allison, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for watching live, and I will talk to you tomorrow morning. I'll be back, but I really appreciate it, and go support Allison. Anything to plug, Allison? End our live stream?
No, man. I'm just off on the journey to figure out my next best way to rise to the challenge that the moment is demanding of us.
You always do it. Right? There's no doubt you'll do it this time as well. Looking forward to whatever that is.
I'll report back.
Thank you. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everybody. Bye. All right. There you go from Amsterdam. It's Allison Jaslow and Christian Finnegan. I hope you like them. I can't do it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic right now. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Great conversation with Celeste Headley that I am planning to post for your enjoyment. John Carroll taking us in and out every day. That's all I've got. I'll see you later.
Let the brave meet the challenge, let the meek weak flee. Oh, you better stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. Let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand